Thank you very much for this invitation. I really enjoyed the first talk and already enjoyed some conversations with some of the other invited speakers. I think this is going to be a very fruitful day. So what I wanted to talk about today really, I hope, speaks to the theme of the conference of aligning AGI. And I wanted to share some thoughts. I think in 10 minutes I'm going to try and be a bit provocative maybe, but hopefully this will stimulate discussion and we can we can have an exchange of view after my talk and during subsequent sections. Okay, so my work is specifically on recommender systems, and I'm going to use them to try to make the point that when we are trying to align the behavior and the evaluation of artificial systems, we should not look at user preferences. So I'm going to make the point that user preferences are a poor, are a poor benchmark for aligning artificial systems. But why would you think that they could be a useful thing to look at in the first place? Okay, so artificial systems are becoming, as you all know, you're here today, you all know this, a part of our daily life. So they can help us navigate the internet, they can actually do things for us. I don't know if you have been tinkering with the new GPTs, they can now do a lot of novel things, and they are increasingly becoming autonomous agents. But autonomous agents and artificial systems in general do have objectives. And how do we set those objectives? How do we make sure that actually their behavior is beneficial for humanity? There are very many views about how to do that, and some of them have been focusing on more, if you want, democratic way of establishing what the correct objective for an artificial system would be. And the reason for that is that, well, maybe we shouldn't just leave it to the technologists or whoever is designing the artificial system to have the final word on what counts as a good objective. So what should this artificial system do? What should it be promoting? Because maybe they have a limited understanding of that. Maybe they don't really know what the final users will appreciate, and they maybe sometimes also don't have the good of society in mind more broadly. So the idea is that although there are some people who are tasked with designing the systems, maybe it's not just what they think should be a good objective for the system that should inform the design. Maybe it should be a bit more, democratic and left to everyone who is concerned to have a say. So here is where user preferences, or in general reviewed preferences, come in. So the idea is this: well, if we can't rely on the view of just a few people who designed the system to decide what is a good objective, then maybe what we can do is use what the users of the system express through their behavior to figure out what is a good objective to have. And here is, I think, where maybe using recommender systems may be a good example. So how many of you have interacted with recommender systems today? Can you raise your hand? Yeah, okay. I think even the ones that haven't raised your hands may have interacted with them. So these are systems that basically structure the way that we navigate information online. Every time you go to social media, you do an online search, you are likely interacting with the recommender system that is filtering the information that you get. Okay, so obviously there's a lot to say about how this system influences our lives, our information gathering, and can manipulate us. But the way in which their objective is often defined is as finding good items, or finding things that are useful for you. How confident are you that they are actually doing this? I see some very concerned expressions. Yeah, that might be the case. But how do you think that actually building systems to have this sole objective of finding things that are good for you would be a way to fix them? Can you raise your hand if you think that that's a good idea? So if we have recommender systems that actually work for their users and are only concerned in finding things that satisfy their user preferences, do you think that would be a good idea? Now I see some raised hands, and maybe some of you are unconvinced, and I'm definitely going to make the case that this would not be a good idea. I don't think we have a lot of time, right? So I'm going to give basically 3 reasons why this is not a good idea, and I think there are more. Okay, so not a good idea because your preferences are likely malleable, they're not fixed. So if I try to use your behavior to predict what you will likely do in the future, I'm doing this under the assumption that your underlying preferences that inform your behavior are something fixed and they are not going to change. But do we have reason to think that this is a correct assumption? Well, probably not, right? In fact, our preferences can evolve if you have anytime you are basically listening to music, for instance, or reading. Your tastes are evolving as a result of your experience. And this is not just about things that involve taste, it could be about things that are more important to our own life. The previous speaker was talking about argumentation, and when we try and persuade other people, we're basically trying to manipulate their preferences, right? We do think that this is sometimes pretty always. So if preferences are malleable, that means that if I'm trying as a recommender system, as an artificial system to satisfy your preferences, I may be trying to satisfy the about the tech. So, okay, so this is the first reason why using revealed preferences may not be a good idea to try to align our artificial system. Preferences are malleable. Can you hear me, by the way? Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Bravo. So, welcome to the 21st century. We're moving on now. I'm so glad. So please, say whatever you want. You have extended time.
Wow, okay, thanks. Oh, I can hear myself so much louder now. It's amazing. This was not at all disruptive. Okay, so I was telling you about reasons why... oh no. Okay, so should I just make a joke? Okay, so let me try to be on track again. So I was telling you about manipulability and malleability of preferences. This is not always a bad thing. I actually think this is, it's just a neutral thing. It's how preferences are. The second reason why aligning to individual preferences may not be a good idea is that it presupposes, this is a bit technical, it presupposes that there is a legible individual that is interacting with the artificial system. Well, this is often not the case. So again, this is valid, I think, across the board, but let's take the case of recommender system again as an example. So when you access a recommender system, the idea is that your behavior reveals your underlying preferences. So if you click on something that has been recommended and then interact with it, then the system will generally deduce that you have a preference for that item, that it somehow satisfied your needs. Of course, this is debatable, but one of the underlying assumptions that I think need to be challenged is that, well, when you're interacting with a system, this is a representative of your whole person. This is, I think, not the case for many reasons. First of all, well, you might, for instance, share your account. What happens when accounts are shared? You can't really make the inference from the behavior to an individual preference, because simply there is no individual. Second, the way that we use these systems can also be, you might have different accounts for different purposes. This is something that I think especially young people do even with a singular. So maybe the way that you interact with the system can be representative not of your whole personal individuality, but just one aspect of it. And yet, when the inferences are made, it's made under the assumption that it's representative of a legible individual. And this is problematic, because then if we infer from the behavior of users on a platform that they prefer a certain type of content, for instance, and then amplify it, this may not actually be representative of their genuine preferences. This may be a very limited view of what it means. The third reason is one of time frame. So if we take the view that we should use preferences as a guide to set the objectives of visual systems, we are taking a very short-term view because we are tying the design and evaluation of these systems to signals that come from behavior of individuals when they're interacting with the system now. This may or may not be indicative of what the value of the system will be in the longer term. And so when we're using revealed preferences to align artificial systems, we are effectively locking in a very specific interpretation of what the behavior of the users means at the time when it is tested. Okay, so I think I'm going to close there, but I want to put forward one thought, which is the idea of trying to align artificial systems using, for instance, individual preferences, comes from the approach of trying to certify that systems are working in a way that is beneficial to humanity. And I have offered some thoughts and some provocations to think that actually this is not going to work on the approach that I've described. So what can we do instead? I think broadly, I would advocate for trying to build systems that can be, whose behavior can be documented and audited more easily. So moving away from certification towards documentation. And that is where more democratic oversight needs to take place. So I'm going to finish there. This is a bit disrupted talk, but I'm really looking forward to having other conversations in the day.
Thank you, Silvia, very much. All right. Thanks again for your fantastic talk, despite the technical disturbances. But yeah, the technology is here to disturb, right? We have one question here.
Yes, hi. So first of all, really thanks for the talk, and you did a great job, regardless of the technical challenges. So I just wanted to add another issue with recommendation systems. It's probably covered by the three ones that you named, but it's more of a macro perspective, and that's bubble formation. I was always as a quantitative scientist, that's always it was always funny to see computer scientists use these logit models to model for recommendations, like for ads. So you like this because you liked it before, right? And this is fine when they're trying to recommend you videos to click or things like that. But I think what we saw right now with the, on the macro level, with the, creation of complete bubbles on social media are actually the macro result of recommendation systems, right? So you basically reinforce preferences as such. So not only do you treat them as stable, as you said, and you presume that somebody's, let's say, interests are only limited to what they reveal. These are all things that you name, but I think on a macro level, this is where it really gets scary when you shove people into specific bubbles. You're really reinforcing them. So this is kind of the transfer of recommendation systems used for advertising, which is kind of like, okay, it doesn't really matter, to actual content and opinion formation. So maybe some views on that.
Well, thanks for this question. I'm really glad you asked. I actually don't agree that it doesn't matter about advertisement. I think there are harms that come from targeted advertising that are reinforced by recommendation systems and by the isolation in which consumers are put by targeted advertising. So that's a slight aside. I mean, I'm a philosopher. I look at more maybe theoretical side, and from my research on what social scientists have written on the topic of bubble formation, my understanding is that it's still a bit, the jury is still out on whether these are really a big concern on social media or not. I mean, I'd be glad to see empirical evidence for the view that they are. So I guess one tendency that we have been observing on social media like X, formerly Twitter, or Facebook, or Instagram, is the attempt to diversify the content that users see, precisely in response to worries about the formation of filter bubbles or echo chambers that might be reinforcing individual preferences and putting them in toxic environments. So there have been various initiatives. For instance, I think X is implementing some form of bridging algorithm, and there are some other technical ways of trying to break these filter bubbles. Whether this is something that is going to be effective or not, I'm actually very skeptical about. So based on my own research and trying to do some computer simulations to see, for instance, how beliefs spread on networks that use recommender systems to decide which users see the information posted by other users. It seems like preliminary results show that actually polarization is going to emerge even when the system is actually trying to promote diversity of content. And this is very preliminary results, so I'm just putting it out there as, again, I'd be glad to see more empirical work on this topic and see how we can bridge it, perhaps. But if that is the case, that is quite dispiriting, that is quite disappointing. And then I wonder, well, whether, the focus on filter bubble numbers, I don't want to say a red herring, but whether there is a more fundamental problem with how we communicate online. And again, this means that using preferences or any kind of revealed behavior to inform better ways of engineering these systems might not be the solution to the problems that we are seeing. Sorry, a bit long-winded. I hope I somewhat answered your question, and happy to talk more.